Alright guys, we're going to be playing some Warp World this week. If you don't know what Warp World does, then we'll show you. It is an 8-mana sorcery that costs triple red plus 5 colorless, and each player shuffles all permanents he or she owns into his or her library, then reveals that many cards from the top of his or her library. Each player puts all artifact, creature, and land cards revealed this way onto the battlefield, then does the same for enchantment cards, then puts all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield on the bottom of his or her library. So if nothing else, that card there, right there, is a reason to just go play Hearthstone. But no, we're playing Magic, so we're going to play Warp World. But first thing I want to do is thank 3 people in particular. I want to thank Pike for doing a bunch of work on testing a Warp World deck. I want to do a thank you and a shout out to Monk1410 for doing the same thing. They've been in concert and constantly debating and building these builds. Also, a minor shout out to Henwen, who's participated in the conversation on NGA. Pike's version is green. Perhaps, I think Warp World is interesting enough. I may get around to doing the green version in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time, just to show you the difference, because it's late in the game's life cycle. It's fun to fuck around with shit like this. But for this week, I'm going to take out Monk's version, which is the blue-based version. And the reason I'm doing it, I wasn't planning on doing this today. There was a user by the name of Fravis who posted a John Token build last week. I said I was going to feature it. Don't worry, Fravis, I haven't forgotten you. I am going to feature that build. I was going to do it today, but since Mobius, actually that's the other person I want to thank, Mobius put up a deck tech for this deck on his channel yesterday and some gameplay. So if you want to go check out Mobius, you know where to find him. I'll put a link in the video description so you can check him out. But I watched his video, and it was actually, it was kind of fun to watch him get all salty about losing. So I decided to audible. I audibled over to Warp World. That's what I'm going to do. All right, so now we know what Warp World does. So basically, we want to get a whole bunch of permanents into play. We want to cast this thing and then flip over different permanents. And the whole goal is to just deplete your opponent's permanents. So we have cards like Warden of the Eye. If we flip it, we get our Warp World back. And we have Runescar Demon. If we flip it, we can go in and get the other Warp World out of our deck. So we just continually warp over and over until we have a bunch of permanents and the opponent has none. So how do we do that? Well, we play cards like Master of Waves, which generate additional permanents and increases our permanent count. So we get to increase our permanent count, and there's potentially goes down, because I think this deck is somewhere around above 90% permanents. I think the only card actually in this deck that is not a permanent card is Warp World. So while your opponent is flipping over Cultivates and Shocks and Ground Assaults and things like that, you're flipping over permanents, putting them on the board, and then, like I said, you're landing Master of Waves and you're landing Captain of the Watch and Core Cartographer, each of which give you additional permanents when they land. So that's the premise of the deck. I'll walk you up the curve now. There's many versions of this floating around on NGA and on different channels, etc. This is what I've arrived at. I haven't played a game with it yet, but this is where I've arrived after watching some gameplay videos over on Mobius' channel and reading some PMs from Monk and Pike, and also just reading the discussion that's going on NGA between Henwen, Pike, and Monk. So many thanks to all involved. This definitely isn't my deck. So yeah, let's just start off with the 2-drops. Let's talk about Ethereum Sculptor. I'm playing all 4 copies. He's a 2-drop 1/2, so he's great. He's a great blocker in this metagame. 2 toughness, yeah, that's fine, but he can kill a token and live to see another day. Another thing that I'm doing with this deck is that since Warp World is an 8-mana sorcery, I am going to play a lot of ramp in here and a lot of land. I don't want to miss a land drop, and I want to cast stuff cheaper. So he does a whole lot of things for this deck that I really like. Hopefully he plays as well as he looks, in theory. Playing 3 copies of Courier's Capsule. I don't really want to play this thing on the second turn, so that's why I'm not playing the full 4. Something I want to draw into probably or play a little bit later, and I don't want to see 2 in my opener or 2 very early. So I think 3 copies is about right. But the deck needs a little bit of card draw, and that's card draw, and it's a permanent for Warp World. So that's why we're going to play 3 of those. And the other 2-drop, we're playing 8. The other 2-droppies are Military Sphere. I'm only playing 1. It gets the discount from Ethereum Sculptor again, so we're kind of there is like an artifact sub theme here. But it's 4 mana to get 2 lands. That's a lot of mana. It's rare that I'm going to even want this effect, I think, since I'm playing 3 Darksteel Ingots and 3 Meteorites. But it is a nice cushion to have this in here rather than, say, a 4th capsule. So that's why I'm playing 1 Military Sphere. Let's go back to 3 mana, and let's see. I'm playing 4 copies of Arrest. So this is removal, and it stays on the battlefield, and it counts as a permanent for us even though it's attached to an opposing creature. So when we warp, even though this will be stuck on, say, an Arbor Colossus or something, it'll count towards our permanent count, and we'll get to flip up a new creature. And also, if you read Warp World, all the artifact, creature, and land cards come in first, and then the enchantment cards come in after. I don't know how, if Duels stacks it right, but what'll happen is he'll get to put all his creatures on the board, then the enchantments enter, and I get to choose, if I flip an arrest, I can stick it on his biggest threat. Say he flips a Kozilek, I can just arrest it. So it's early game removal, and it's not a bad flip to just slow your opponent down. So we got 10 3-drops, that's 4 of them. Let's keep on going up. Guard Gamazo, this guy's central. We all know the power of the jellyfish. He's a 1/3 defender flying, and combat damage doesn't hurt him. He can pick off tokens, he can Brickwall, Baneslayer, Stormbreath Dragon all day long. So I mean, he's a pretty cool guy. He sits there and he lets you get to 8 mana, and that's what he does. So let's move on up to Darksteel Ingot. Pretty important. We're playing a 4-color deck with all basic lands. The reason we're playing all basic lands is because when we cast Warp World, we actually want our mana to come into play untapped. So we're playing all basics, which means the mana's a bit rough. So we have to play all 3 copies of Darksteel Ingot, but we're playing our Ethereum Sculptor, so we do get a discount on it. If we get to do that sort of thing. And we're also playing 3 copies of Meteorite, which is basically a 5-mana Darksteel Ingot that is destructible. And but it has a shock effect stapled onto it. 5 mana is a lot. It's a lot for that effect. It's a decent flip off Warp World, because you can just point the 2 damage at one of their small creatures that they flip up, decrease their permanent count for your subsequent warps. But it's mostly the mana fixing, and again we have the Ethereum Sculptor for the mana discount. So that is, well, I was talking my way up the curve, but then I just moved straight from 3 to 5. We've only got 4 4-drops though, so I'll go back and talk about those. Core Cartographer. This is, again, it's ramp. I'm only playing 3 of the 4 available copies. So you cast her, so she's a 4-mana 2/2. I mean, she'll chump block for a turn, but she gets you a Plains, and so if you have the 1 white mana to cast this, she'll go get another one, and that enables you to cast Captain of the Watch on turn 5 potentially. But yeah, I think 3 is correct because it's a 4-drop. We need to have white mana to cast it, and I don't want to see, again, just like the Courier's Capsule, I don't want to see multiples. I would like to see potentially 1 in the early game, so that's why I'm going with that. There's 1 other 4-drop in the deck. It is Master of Waves. I did cut out some of the blue cards that were in the other versions of this deck. I don't think Master is going to be as strong in my version of the deck as he is probably in some of the others. But I don't really just want to build around a 1-of Mythic Rare. He still has a lot of value when you flip Gamazoas, Capsules, Sculptors, and of course his own pip counts towards Devotion. Plus there is the blue pip on Warden of the Eye. I mean, if he just generates 3 tokens, that's 3 additional permanents for your next warp, and I mean that's all I'm really looking for. Anything over that, I mean, even 2 is fine. 3 is really good, and anything above that 4-5 is just amazing. And when you generate that many permanents and you warp again, then all of a sudden your entire deck is on the battlefield. So he's definitely worth a spot, and that's the reason, honestly. This card here, like I said, I'm not building around him, but at the same time, this is the reason that I chose to play the blue-based version rather than the green-based version. But again, I'm probably going to test out that green version in a little while. So, anyways, let's talk about 5 mana. We have 6 cards at 5 mana. 3 of them I told you about, the Meteorites. And the other 3 is Warden of the Eye, our Warden of the Eye. So it's a 5 mana, 3/3 in Jeskai colors. You get to, it's basically an Archaeomancer, except it can get back artifacts and stuff. Basically any non-creature, non-land, just as it says on the card there. So you can get back an Obelisk, or you can get back a Meteorite if for some reason it got blown up. You can get back an Armillary Sphere. You can get back a, you can get back a Courier's Capsule. So, you can even get back an Arrest if for some reason your opponent sacrifices his own creature somehow. Your Arrest ends up in the graveyard. Warden can get it back. But the main reason he's here is that when you warp, you flip up a Warden, and you just pick up that warp that you just cast, and you get to cast it again. Since all your mana comes in tap, you can just chain Warp World. That's the whole plan for Warden of the Eye. So, yeah, now let's move on to the 6 mana plus category. We have 2 copies of Captain of the Watch. This card is 4 permanents for 6 mana, and it's 7 power spread across 4 bodies. It's pretty fucking huge. And again, I'm playing 3 copies of Core Cartographer. So even if I don't draw double planes, I also have the 1 Armillary Sphere and all the Darksteel Ingots, Meteorites. So I don't think double weight is going to be that hard, especially by the time you get to 6 mana. And, to have 7 Vigilant power spread across 4 bodies for 6 mana, potentially on turn 5, I don't know if the deck can do it on turn 4. I didn't really think about it, but you know, it's pretty powerful. And again, the permanent count, it's one card in your deck, but it's 4 permanents. So I mean, it's basically, as far as I'm concerned, between Master of the Waves, hopefully generating 3 tokens, and this thing definitely generating 3 tokens, we're gonna have some serious permanent presence if we can get to cast it. So that's why she's in there. You know, let's keep looking. Got the Runescar Demons in here. I mean, I'm only playing 1 swamp, just 1. That's it. And the only reason I'm playing 1 swamp is because I have 1 Armillary Sphere. You know, I'll probably never hardcast a Runescar Demon. Most likely, I'll just pitch it to Obelisk. You know, if it gets to that point. But we still want to play both copies, just because when you flip them up, you get to go. If you don't flip up your Warden of the Eye to get back your Warp World from the graveyard, then you can flip up your Runescar Demon to go get the other copy of Warp World. Since we're playing 2, you can go get the other Warp World out of your deck. So I mean, that's 5 cards, the 2 demons and the 3 wardens, that are going to let you just chain your Warp Worlds together. So that's why he's there. Probably he's 7 mana. Probably never going to cast him, but he's got to be there. Don't need to talk about Warp World. I started it off by reading about that. Now we're playing 1 copy of Obelisk. We are playing, again, the artifact ramp strategy. We've got the Ethereum Sculptors, we've got the Darksteel Ingots, the Meteorites. This deck has access to all the modes because we're playing 6 of these cards here, the 3 Meteorites, 3 Ingots, that give us all 5 colors of mana. So I mean, it's a great card. Don't want to play both because you know, I don't want my curve to be that high, and I don't want multiples of this card. If I flip 1, great. If I don't, that's fine. It's not something I really like to hardcast, I don't think, in a deck like this until I get to 8 mana. And again, once I get to 8, I want to be warping. So, you know, the only concern I really have, I'm playing 25 land because I don't want to miss a drop. And I'm playing all 6 of these effects, the ramps, the cartographers, everything. My only concern is the lack of card draw. If I don't find a Warp World, I don't know if I'm going to be able to win. I mean, like I said, I do have Master of Waves and Captain of the Watch, but I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to win the game without drawing a Warp World. So, you know, that 1 swamp there, and the only 1 copy of Armillary Sphere, you know, it's going to be hard to get some double black. It's a risk that I'm willing to take, though, and we'll see if it bites me in the ass. All right, guys. You know, again, thanks to everyone I shouted out at the beginning, and let's see if we can win some games with Warp World this week. All right, guys. We'll see you for a gameplay in a couple of minutes.